What do you need to be a blacksmith? A good attitude, like Mother Bob Ross. Alrighty guys, thank you for joining me in the workshop once again. I'm Hunter Wilkins and this is Father and Forge. We're going to do a quick video today on top 5 things to know. Top 5 things to know to get started blacksmithing. So here we go guys. Number 5. Figure out your equipment situation. Figure out what you're going to need to get started. There's a lot of factors to determine in that, depending on what kind of blacksmithing you're going to be doing, what kind of things you're going to be making, what your overall goals are and everything. But keep it really basic, basic thing you need some kind of anvil, some kind of piece of steel to hammer on to be able to shape your metal the way you want it. You're going to need a heat source, a forge of some kind, so you need to figure that out. Figure out what kind of space you have, figure out where you're working at, if you're inside or outside. Obviously my workshop is way too small for me to have any kind of forge set up in here, so I do everything outside. So I have a propane forge now. So I have a propane forge now, but I started out using charcoal, and I built just a cheap brick forge with basically powered off of a hairdryer that used the air from the hairdryer blowing into it to create enough heat to work metal. Actually works really well that way. You can do that with very simple stuff. I've done a video where I built a cheap charcoal forge in just like under an hour basically. I did a video on that. I'll link it here, but figure out your materials, figure out what you want to do. This is probably the biggest thing I can say as far as this part of the video goes is equipment. Depending on what you want to do, you want to get the best stuff that you can within your budget. For me it's really hard. I don't have much of a budget, so I have to kind of get things as I go, and sometimes that sucks because you buy something and then you figure out that you need something better. So you've already spent money on a cheaper version of something and then you need to go back and get a better one anyway. Just like with my grinder, I use a 1x30. Can't stand it. I can't wait for the day that I can afford a 2x72, but that's a ways off. They're too expensive, so you kind of have to do what you can, get what you can with the resources you have. But a lot of people say this, Jason Knight says this, I'll say it too, it's better to buy once and cry once. There's also a lot of little things that you're going to need too, so you got to try to think about those as you go. Some things aren't going to be as apparent in the beginning as they will become later on. So once you get started, you might be fine just using a piece of steel and hammering on it, but then you realize, ooh, I need tongs. But the cool thing about blacksmithing is you can pretty much make whatever tools you need, so that's really versatile. It's really cool. I love making tools. I've made both my pairs of tongs. They're ugly, but I made them, and I'm proud that I made them. So there's stuff like that. So think about that. Learn or figure out what equipment you're going to need to get started. If you're going to be making knives, you're going to need some extra stuff like a grinder, or you can do it with files. You can do it with hand files, but it's just that's a long process. But like I said, think about what you're going to need, plan that out first, figure out what's going to work for your space, do some research on the differences between propane and charcoal or coal, and figure out what's going to suit you best. So that's what I can say on that. Really simple concept, but it might not be something that you think about when you're starting out. Learn your steel. So figure out what kind of stuff you're going to make. If you're going to make like bottle openers and ornamental stuff, you can deal with wrought iron or mild steel. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to get into knives and things of that nature, you're going to want to go to a better quality steel, something high carbon, Damascus, whatever the case may be. Maybe you're going to make your own Damascus. If you're starting out, I don't suggest you dream that big right off the bat. Start with the basics and work your way up to that. But I don't make the Damascus. I'm still an amateur. I buy typically 1095. Want to start playing with some 80s TRV2, but I usually play with 1095 steel. I get a pretty good heat treat on that. I never really have any issues with it, so that's my go-to steel. And again, something from Jason Knight, he always mentions learn your steel. Pick a steel and get good at it. Learn how it moves, learn how it heat treats, learn everything about it. So there's that. Now if you're doing ornamental stuff and you're just using mild steel, that's not as big of a deal, but it's still good to get familiar with your steel. Do some research, figure out what materials are going to work best for you. So I did a lot of work with rebar when I started out. Now rebar is kind of hit and miss. Sometimes you get more carbon content than you do other times. So there's certain times, like I've actually made a few rebar knives that have actually hardened up and been fine. But I've also made some that didn't. I've also made some other really cool stuff out of rebar. So there's certain materials that you got to think about like that.
Number 3.
Okay, so number 3 seems like a no-brainer, but probably the biggest thing I could say, or one of the most helpful things I could say in this, is learn from other sources. So you're not going to get out there and you're not going to be just a master at this immediately. It takes years of practice and years of learning these concepts and how to move the metal the way you want it. There's many paths to pursue as far as what you're learning and how you're going to learn it. But there's so much information out there. Like don't ignore it. Take any advice you can get from other sources and do your research. And before you start a project that you know nothing about, watch a video, read an article about it, or an article, but read an instructional about it and see if try to use that as a guideline. That'll help you tremendously if you have some kind of mental blueprint as to what you're doing, rather than just going out there and banging on a steel like a rabid monkey, and you end up with a piece of crap that you don't know what to do with. So there's no shame in that. There's definitely no shame in trying to learn from others' work when you're doing this craft. This is a highly specialized trade, and people have been doing it for many thousands of years, and there's going to be a lot of people that have way more knowledge than you do when you're starting out. So you can just do whatever learning you can, basically. So that's all I'm saying with that one.
Number 2.
Networking. So this one kind of goes hand in hand with number 3. Now, if you're networking, like I'm on Instagram all the time. I'm actually a member of a group on there with Florida knife makers, and so we talk all day long about making knives and different techniques, different stuff we've learned, different mistakes that we've made, and we learn from each other like that. That's what that format is for. So if you have a source like that you can draw from and be a part of, especially if it's like a localized community, kind of like what I'm doing, I think it helps a lot, and I think it's really great. And that's, like I said, this goes hand in hand with number 3 because it goes along with learning, and you can use this as a tremendous source of knowledge. And it's great because you can ask questions in real time. It's one thing to read an instructional on how to do something, but it's another thing to say, hey, I tried this and it didn't work. What do you guys do, or what can I do better? So that's a huge one, and it's helped me a lot. It's also really fun. So I didn't really like social media, and then I started using it for this purpose, and I have a lot of fun with it. It's really fun. I'm on Instagram all the time, posting all pictures of all my projects and stuff. So like I said, if you're not following me on Instagram and you're watching this, you should follow me on Instagram too. So, all right, moving on.
Number 1.
So this is again something really simple, but it's important. Like I said before, you're not going to get out there and just be a master right off the bat. It's setting small goals for yourself. You don't have to just go out there willy-nilly and just start banging on stuff and trying to make whatever. It's like, I'm gonna make a screwdriver today. Set small goals. Learn what you're doing. If you're just starting out, a good practice is, all right, I'm gonna make this ornamental project today, so I can learn how the steel moves. I'm gonna make leaves. Like Alex Steele says to make a bunch of leaves when you first start, and I actually did that when I got back into this and started doing it again. I realized that you know what? I don't have the hammer control that I think that I do necessarily. I'm gonna make some of these leaves and see how it goes. And I did that, and I've made a few good ones, and I made some bad ones too. But it's a good practice routine, and it's good to do that. So set small goals for yourself. Don't just say I'm gonna make the most badass knife in the world right off the bat, because you're not. It's gonna take time. It's gonna take a lot of effort and learning and failures in the process as well, probably. Now, some people are better than others naturally, and they might do it great one time, and then they might try it again and they can't replicate it. So that's the thing, is you want to be able to be consistent. That's part of the skill. Is just because you made one good knife, if you can't ever do it again, then that doesn't mean crap. So, get good at it. Set small goals for yourself. Make little projects, and then repeat the project. See if you can do it again. So, like with me, tongs are one of my nemesis. So I every now and then I'll say I need to make another set of tongs. I need to make another set of tongs, and I'll do it. And they get better and better each time I do it. But I'm still, they're still hard. I'm not gonna lie. So set small goals for yourself and try to track your progression. See, do it in a way where you can see, this is what I did at the beginning of the year. This is what I did at the end of the year. I'm getting better, and it feels good when you do it that way too. I think it's a good thing. Okay, so we've covered the 5 things that were on my list to cover for the top 5 things to know when you start blacksmithing. And there's one more though that I want to talk about, and that's just have fun with it. This is a fun hobby. It's a fun craft. It's great. It's great mentally, I think. Like I feel good when I do it. I think about it all week long, when I'm at work and stuff, and I don't have time when I come home to do anything with it. But once I get the weekend and I actually come out and start hammering on steel, it's like the best feeling in the world. I love it. It's something that I would absolutely love to do full time if I could, but it's not something that's easy to make money with. So I might be a little ways off from that, but a man can dream, right? So yeah, don't go into this and think that like, oh, I'm gonna be a blacksmith and I gotta do it this way and I gotta do this and I gotta do that. I'm gonna make money doing this. You just chill, because the best thing to do is treat it like a hobby first, and then see where it goes from there. I think that's my personal thing. Now, if you want to become a master at it, don't think of it as a hobby necessarily. Think of it as an art. The hobby was a bad term. I take that back. Don't think of it as a hobby. Think of it as an art form. You're an artist. You're making something. You're doing something with your hands, and it's fantastic. So have fun with it, and you'll see how things go for you, and it's amazing. So if you haven't done it and you're going to get into it, I salute you absolutely. I'm an amateur myself, but I have zero problems. If anybody has any questions for me or anything, just hit me up on Instagram or hit me up in the comments here. I'll gladly answer anything if I know. If I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer, because I have good networking resources. So there's that. But that's it. Just have fun, and I really appreciate you watching. So if you like this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't like it, do it anyway. Check me out on Instagram, check me out on Patreon. That's it. Thank you for watching so much. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video.